In January 1990, FBI agents and D.C. police caught Mayor Marion Barry on camera smoking crack cocaine in a Washington hotel room. The sting operation didn't just expose a personal failing, it confirmed years of suspicion that the nation's capital was being run by a man who had turned public office into a shield for his own vices. The image of a sitting mayor using drugs under federal surveillance became one of the most defining symbols of political decay in modern America. But Barry's downfall was not an isolated lapse, but the culmination of a pattern, years of mismanagement, favoritism, and ethical compromises that eroded the integrity of his administration. Behind the slogans of empowerment and reform was a city mired in dysfunction, crime, contracts traded for loyalty, and a mayor who seemed untouchable until the moment the cameras rolled. Who was Marion Barry? How did he enter and even remain in politics? What were his controversies?
Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History.
Marion Barry Jr. was born on March 6, 1936 in Edabina, Mississippi, the third child of Mattie Cummings and Marion Barry. His father died when he was 4 years old, and the next year his mother moved the family to Memphis, Tennessee. She married David Cummings, a butcher, and together they raised 8 children. Marion Barry attended Florida Elementary and graduated from Booker T. Washington High. The schools were segregated at that time, as were public facilities. He worked as a child picking cotton, delivering and selling newspapers, and bagging groceries. While in high school, Barry worked as a waiter at the American Legion Post and, at age 17, earned the rank of Eagle Scout. Barry attended Lemoyne-Owen College in Memphis, graduating in 1958, and later earned a Master of Science degree in organic chemistry from Fisk University. During his time as a student, he was arrested on multiple occasions for violating segregation laws and protesting. He decided to go to the University of Tennessee, where he was awarded a graduate fellowship. Barry began doctoral chemistry studies at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, the only African American in the program. He was prohibited from tutoring white children, and his wife, Blanty Evans, could not work at the white school. Barry quit the program. In 1960, he was elected as the first chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. In 1965, Barry and Evans moved to Washington, D.C. to open a local chapter of SNCC. He coordinated street demonstrations and a boycott to protest bus fare increases. Barry organized rides to work for those who needed them. The boycott cost the bus line thousands of dollars, proving Barry's ability to organize. From 1972 to 1974, Barry was president of the D.C. Board of Education. Upon establishment of the D.C. Home Rule in 1974, Barry was elected an at-large member of the first elected city council. He served as chair of the District of Columbia Committee on Finance and Revenue and was re-elected in 1976. Marion Barry was elected mayor in 1979, which saw crime and unemployment rise dramatically during his first administration, in part because his layoffs focused on the police department, with 1,500 terminations by 1981, with almost all dismissed officers being white. The city's rising debt was a constant problem as well. These numbers make clear that during Barry's terms in office and the years that followed, Washington, D.C. was experiencing an extraordinarily high murder rate, among the highest in the nation per capita. And as if that weren't enough, the city was also plagued by organized crime within its own police force, a story we'll come back to later. Marion Barry had recalculated what his administration claimed was a $41 million budget surplus, but in reality, the city was $285 million in debt, a deficit that remained unresolved by the end of his term. Graft and embezzlement among Barry appointees, such as Employment Services Director Ivanhoe Donaldson, was rampant, but would not be discovered for several years. Barry had a number of many scandals, and he traveled with finances billed to the city that he often kept secret, and was first reported to be using cocaine downtown nightclubs. He admitted later that his drug and alcohol use was out of control, but he was still reelected. Though D.C. experienced a massive real estate boom that helped alleviate the city's fiscal problems, at least for a time, government spending skyrocketed. Barry's administration posted a fifth straight budget surplus, but the next year it was revealed that D.C. had a $110 million deficit. Barry's policy of combating unemployment was creating government jobs and increased the city government's payrolls. By 1986, nobody in the administration knew exactly how many employees it had, and taxes were raised continuously to pay those salaries. Another part of Barry's corruption was that his administration gave contracts to Barry's political connections and high-end campaign contributors to the tune of $856 million. Barry and his inner circle suddenly became quite wealthy, and they all moved out of the crime-ridden city and into the wealthy suburbs. Barry ran for a third term and faced a primary challenge by Jesse Jackson. Barry, who knew that most of Jackson's income came from delivering speeches or honoraria, used his political influence to disqualify Jackson by getting a law passed that said anyone who made more than a certain amount in honoraria was ineligible to run for D.C. office. Council members jokingly called this the Jesse Jackson Law. In 1987, a long-running corruption probe into the D.C. government, including an investigation as to whether Barry or his office manipulated city contracts or accepted illegal campaign contributions or payoffs. At that time, prosecutors did not have sufficient evidence to seek an indictment against Barry as of October 1987. By late 1989, federal officials had been investigating Barry on suspicion of illegal drug possession and use. That fall, they prosecuted several of Barry's associates for cocaine use, including Charles Lewis, a native of the United States Virgin Islands. He was implicated in a drug investigation involving Barry and a room at the Washington's Ramada Inn in December 1988. With the murder rate climbing, in 1989, Barry received a federal directive to hire 1,800 new officers, replacing those he fired, and Barry complied by cutting corners in recruitment, hiring mostly black officers who were not highly qualified, did not run background checks, and he provided almost no training. This would not end well. By 1994, the graduates of the 1989 to 90 and 91 academy classes represented about one-third of the force, yet they made up about half of the officers either charged or investigated for crimes from shoplifting to murder, and more than half of those accused of false statements and insubordination, including their police chief, a friend of Barry's. The report, Human Rights Watch, Shielded from Justice, Washington, D.C., documented how the MPD suffered serious corruption issues. A deputy superintendent was charged with embezzlement and extortion. An investigations chief likewise was charged, and rank-and-file officers engaged in misconduct were also charged, but more was to come. Barry again came under federal scrutiny by late 1989 for cocaine possession and use. The investigations included a joint sting operation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and D.C. Police. The sting targeted Barry for smoking crack cocaine, and it was a lengthy investigative process. Then, on January 18, 1990, Barry was arrested at the Vista International Hotel in D.C. after a woman whom the FBI had recruited and offered a deal in a prior criminal case invited him to smoke freebase cocaine. He accepted, and he was videotaped. After the FBI raided the room and arrested him, Barry was recorded saying, "Bitch set me up. I shouldn't have come up here. Goddamn bitch." Barry had been interviewed by federal agents in the past under oath about drug use, which he denied. The government alleged 3 felony counts of perjury, 10 counts of drug possession, 1 misdemeanor count of conspiracy to possess cocaine. The indictment, multiple counts, included perjury before the grand jury, possessing cocaine, freebase use, and conspiracy. The trial was held in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia before Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson. On August 10, 1990, the jury convicted Barry of one count, a misdemeanor count of possession of cocaine. The jury was divided along racial lines and acquitted Barry of another possession charge. All the black jurors voted pretty much not guilty on all the major charges. The jury failed to reach a verdict on the remaining perjury and possession counts, so a mistrial was declared for those counts. On October 26, 1990, Judge Jackson sentenced Barry to 6 months in federal prison, plus 1 year probation and a $5,000 fine. The judge, in his remarks, stated Barry had given aid, comfort, and encouragement to the drug culture, and that his role as mayor made the offense more serious. Barry began serving his sentence in October 1991 after his appeals failed, at a minimum security federal prison in Petersburg, Virginia, then later moved to Loretto, Pennsylvania, due to alleged misconduct in prison due to an oral sex incident, although Barry denied it. He was released from prison on parole in April 1992. Specifically, the FBI launched a year-and-a-half-long sting called Operation Broken Faith, in which 12 MPD officers, mostly from the 1989-1990 hiring wave, were arrested in 1993 for escorting what they believed were wholesale drug shipments into the city. The officers were recorded receiving $75,800 each in cash to escort 135 kilograms of bulk cocaine shipments. The officers arrested on December 14, 1993 were charged after months of recorded meetings, wiretaps, and videos. They were charged with conspiracy to distribute cocaine, robbery, possession with intent to distribute, and conspiracy to bribe. They tried to make a connection to Marion Barry, but they could not. Most of these officers had been hired during the 1989-90 hiring surge. Officers made very few arrests, indicating low productivity, low competence, poor supervision, and even complicity in the crimes themselves. When Barry returned as mayor in 1995, the homicide counts were lower in the city, and almost half of his police force were under investigation, which he tried to stop, and over 100 of them were in prison. But the feds were still investigating Barry and his associates on other charges. Police Chief Larry Soulsby resigned in 1997 amid impropriety allegations that tied him to Lieutenant Jeffrey Stowe. Stowe, then head of an extortion fraud investigations unit, was charged with embezzlement and extortion, domestic violence, racketeering, and was accused of stealing department funds and attempting to blackmail nightclub patrons. He also sought to gather intel on the FBI probe into himself. In 1997, another associate of Barry, Young, was indicted on 28 felony counts, including conspiracy, money laundering, and false statements regarding a D.C. leased office building project. The indictments alleged $413,000 in kickbacks from the general contractor. Barry himself could not be directly connected to the crimes at that time. On March 6, 2002, Barry declared his intention to challenge at-large council member Phil Mendelson in the Democratic primary. Within a month, he decided against running after U.S. Park Police found traces of marijuana and cocaine in his car. Despite the conviction and other scandals, Barry made a political comeback amazingly, but in 2005, he pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges of failing to file tax returns, both federal and local, and was sentenced to 3 years probation. During that tax case period in 2006, a court-ordered drug test showed Barry positive for cocaine and marijuana. On February 9, 2009, prosecutors filed a motion in federal court to revoke Barry's probation for not filing his 2007 tax return. According to one prosecutor, Barry had not filed his taxes for 8 of the last 9 years. On July 4, 2009, Barry was taken into custody by the Park Police after Donna Watts Breithaupt, his ex-girlfriend, who admitted to the kickbacks paid to Barry, claimed he was stalking her. Barry was arrested and charged with misdemeanor stalking. Following an interview with authorities, he was released on citation and told he must appear before the Superior Court of the District of Columbia on July 9th. However, all charges for some reason were dropped on July 8th. But the truth about those illegal kickbacks surfaced again in 2010 when a special counsel report found Marion Barry had in fact awarded a contract to his then-girlfriend, Donna Watts Breithaupt, and the paper trail proved that she repaid him money from the no-bid contract she was given, and the D.C. Council censured Barry 12-0, removing his committee leadership roles for conduct that violated the public trust. The special counsel report also said that Barry had requested 41 earmarks in 2009 worth $8.4 million, some of which were paid to organizations rife with waste and abuse. The report also said that Barry had impeded the investigation by refusing to respond to questions and by telling witnesses, including his ex-girlfriend, not to respond to questions from federal authorities and not give subpoenaed documents to the special counsel. This meant Marion Barry had elevated himself from just being a drug user to intimidating witnesses and trying to pervert the course of justice. In 2013, Barry was fined $13,600 by the D.C. Board of Ethics and Government Accountability for accepting illegal cash gifts from city contractors while serving on the D.C. Council. But he was not indicted. It is a Democrat city still to this day. On August 2, 2014, Barry was in a traffic accident in the district, which his spokesperson blamed on a hypoglycemic attack due to his diabetes. At the time of the accident, Barry had $2,800 in unpaid tickets for speeding and parking violations he had accumulated since 2012. Again, he was not indicted. Marion Barry was a controversial figure, a lightning rod that seemed to prove that Democrat politicians, no matter how corrupt, would always be supported by like-minded liberal voters, and a prime example of supreme ideological incompetence. Marion Barry died from heart disease at United Medical Center in Washington, D.C. on November 23, 2014, aged 78. Following 3 days of memorial observances, he was buried on December 6 at Washington's Congressional Cemetery. In summary, Barry's tenure as mayor at various times was marked by crime and total failure. In 1988, Washington, D.C. recorded 369 homicides, a number that climbed to 434 the following year, setting a record by that time. And in 1990, the total reached roughly 472 confirmed homicides, and in 1991, it rose again to 482. The violence became so routine that a local TV station launched a Friday night segment on Channel Fox 5 called City Under Siege, which aired at 11 p.m., dedicated solely to tracking the city's weekly murder count. Marion Barry's story is not one of redemption, but one of decay. His rise from activist to mayor became a testament to how corruption can masquerade as leadership when a city grows numb to failure. Under his watch, Washington, D.C. fell deeper into debt, violence, and moral collapse, a capital city run by a man who treated power as a personal entitlement. Even after conviction and public humiliation, Barry's return to office showed just how easily loyalty can be weaponized against accountability. His legacy stands as a warning of what happens when a community lowers its standards so far that corruption becomes tradition.
Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.